Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to plan, a beginner's guide to how to plan. A big key to my success in life has been the ability to plan for the future. This skill has allowed me to complete tasks that I otherwise would be too complex or too long to complete in one chunk. Planning has given me the ability to take a very complex chunk and break it down into smaller and smaller pieces so I can accomplish each one of those tasks very effectively. Planning is a key skill that I think everyone can use in their lives to make things less time consuming or complex. When you break something down from a very large goal into smaller and smaller pieces, and then you're able to accomplish those pieces much more quickly and effectively than if you were to tackle on a huge challenge at once. And many of the tips that I've offered has come from my own personal experience on how I plan things over the last decade or so. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why planning is important, how I've used planning in my life, and tips on planning in general. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends if you like this content. And here we go. So first, let's talk about why planning is so important by going through 3 key steps. So number 1, it gives you a sequence of events. Planning is great because done properly, it gives you a nice sequence of events. It allows you to put things in a format which can be easily read step by step. This is great because you don't have to overcomplicate things. All you have to do is follow the directions once you get it down on paper. People tend to plan things in their head, and sometimes they can't recall everything 100%. This is because the process sometimes is so long and complex, it's hard to plan everything in your head. And so putting it down on paper and planning it out in a sequence of events is the best way to go about it. Because when you write it down, it's harder to miss something because you're physically seeing it put on paper. So number 2, it breaks down things into manageable chunks. So another key aspect of planning is to break down something that's large into smaller and manageable chunks. This is key because the smaller, more manageable chunk is either less time consuming or it's just easier overall. And when you complete this task, it gives you a nice little confidence boost. This also allows you to not be overwhelmed by the large scope of the plan you're creating. This is because when we have a large or complex plan, breaking it down into small manageable chunks, it's just easier to visually see and do. It allows your mind to be less overwhelmed by the entire tasks. And so if you just focus on the few tasks that you need to create or finish in the meantime, then it's much more manageable to tackle on the whole plan overall. So once you start completing tasks one by one, it's going to be easier and easier to stay motivated and complete more tasks. And when you break down everything into more manageable chunks, it's much easier to pick up small things that you might miss. And then that will help you out even better because now you can plan even more thoroughly. And number 3, it forces your mind to think about the activity at hand. People tend to default into thinking that things will be okay. And when you're doing something large and complex, it's a lot harder to make sure everything is okay without some sort of plan in place. Planning is a tool that allows your mind to have some structure. It's easier to follow something from A to Z rather than having it all in your mind jumbled up and not really knowing what's clear from step to step. So when you start the planning process, it focuses your mind on that activity alone and blocks everything out. So you're only focused on the plan or goal at hand. And this also helps out by not missing key important details of your plan. And those are some of the reasons why planning is so important. Next, I'll show you how I plan in my own life. So planning is really an essential part of my life. I use it whenever I need to get something done. It can be small things or large things. I always try to have a plan in place when I start something. This helps me get focused and not miss out on important details. So one of the biggest ways that planning has helped me is when I moved to Seattle. Moving to a different state was not logistically easy. It was very difficult. And during the moving process, there was a lot of things I just needed to plan for. For example, moving furniture, license change, changing addresses, and also saying goodbye to my friends in the area. It was an overwhelming task to try to do it alone. And I knew that if I kept it all in my head, I would go crazy. Because there would be 100 small things to do, and it'd be impossible to try to fit it all in my head, because I would end up missing a lot of those things. And also going through the process of moving to a different state, I was emotionally preparing myself to start from zero again. So when I started the moving process, I used Google Keep as a tool to keep track of everything that I needed to do. And I go through this tool in more depth in my previous video on productivity hacks for 2021. In it, I show you how I use this tool to not only keep track of what I need to do, but also keep tabs of my long-term and short-term goals. This tool really helped me keep priorities of all the things that I need to do. And what's really nice about it is that I made a list of everything that I needed to do before I moved to Seattle. It really helped me keep a priority of what's important because there was a lot of things important, but not all of it was time sensitive. So my move from California to Washington really stress tested my planning skills. There were so many things that I needed to do and prepare for. It was a good example of having a plan in place and executing what you needed to do. Ultimately, I was able to move successfully, and there was only a few things that I wasn't able to do just because time ran out. So another thing that I needed to plan for, and this happened just recently, is moving my tiny house. I had to move this tiny house about 100 miles from its previous location to a new location. This was because I just wanted to have the tiny house in a new location, and the previous location just wasn't working for me. So I had a plan for a one-day move, and a lot of things had to go right. Finding people to help me set up the tiny house to move, finding a tower, and also the new location needed a lot of logistical planning as well. On the surface, there was only a few things that you needed to really do. And at first glance, it might be pretty easy. Just get a couple of people in place and then just coordinate with the driver and you're ready to go. But in reality, there was a lot of pieces to this moving puzzle. All these people were busy with their day-to-day life, so I had to really plan to coordinate when the move would occur. And then double checking to make sure everything was confirmed before we go. If I left everything to chance and try to figure it out on the fly or the day of, I would be screwed. Because there was a lot of things that I needed to logistically prepare for. And if I didn't write it down, I would have completely forgot about it. And that would have meant extra trips to the old location, or it would have meant taking further time out of my day to try to fix a problem that I could have easily mitigated by spending a little more time planning. And it would also cost me more money, because if I hadn't confirmed or made sure everything went according to plan, I would have ended up asking them to come back, and eventually that would have cost more money for the move. So for my planning efforts, I planned everything down to the exact hour, and I was able to complete everything within an hour of my original schedule. Even though it's not logistically as difficult as moving to a new state, planning to move a tiny house was also very taxing and demanding for that one day. And then lastly, this is a big one, planning my life. So in my life, I have a lot of long-term goals that I want to achieve. Planning for my life in increments of 5, 10, or 15 years has been critical in helping me achieve my goals. After I plan my goals, I check in with myself yearly to see if I'm still on track. And if I'm getting farther away from my goals, I try to replan or figure out if that goal is even worth achieving now. Because there's some things in life where life circumstances change and your goals need to change along with it. So for example, some of my short-term and long-term goals are to become a nightclub singer when I'm 40, have Airbnb rentals in about 2 to 3 years, and grow a successful YouTube channel within 3 years as well. All of these goals require constant maintenance and reevaluation, and I have to structure my life in support of those long-term goals. So planning is very important because I break down those long-term goals into smaller and manageable chunks that can be completed in maybe a month or a year time frame, sometimes even smaller week to week. So for example, small manageable chunks could be releasing a YouTube video every week, or playing the piano 3 times a week to get better. So planning for my life has been by far the most useful for me. Planning short-term and long-term goals are not easy. It takes an incredible amount of work and dedication to it. And breaking it down into more manageable chunks for me to accomplish just makes things a lot easier for me. So now let's look into some tips to help you plan. So number 1, be clear with an end goal. Having a plan starts with the end goal. What are you trying to accomplish? And then making sure that whatever your end goal is, that your plan follows it to completion or results in that end goal. The more definition, the more clear it is, then it's easier for you to plan accordingly. So for example, say you have a goal of making 100K. Because there's so many different ways to make that money, it just doesn't help you to try to plan for it if you don't know what path you're going to take. So for example, if you have a goal of making 100K in real estate, that makes it much more easier for you to plan for it. Because then all your small manageable chunks can be towards real estate. So having a clear goal in mind, the clearer the better, results in better planning and higher probability that you'll actually achieve it, rather than wasting your time with other things that might not help your goal. Unclear goals results in a loss of time in planning, and it also might not give you enough definition so that you'll stay interested in it. So for example, if you wanted to make 100K and you follow a different path to get there, and your true path is real estate, you might not end up making your goal because you started the path with just getting that amount of money, but you found out that you don't really like the job you're doing, and then you end up quitting, so you never reach your goal. So circling back, one of the key aspects is to have a clear goal in mind of what you want to accomplish before you start to plan. So number 2, have a backup plan. One of the ways planning helps you is that it gives you the option of having backup plans to reach your end goal. Things don't always go according to plan, so once you have your primary plan in place, you can think about creating a backup plan for it. Depending on how complex or time-consuming that primary plan can be, you might want to put a backup plan in place to mitigate time lost or money lost. For example, if you're planning an international trip and you're going for a really long time and you have a couple of things that you want to see, have a backup plan just in case those places are shut down, closed, or something else that happened that prevents you from going to that place to visit. That way, when something goes wrong on your trip, you still have a backup plan in place. One of the main reasons why I plan is to have some semblance of control over an uncontrollable mess. Everything large and complex and takes a lot of time is inherently messy. Having a backup plan calms my mind and gives me a sense of control and provides me comfort to know that I thought about all the things that could go wrong and I've planned for it just in case it does fall apart. Number 3, do you value time or money? In most cases, planning comes down to a balance of the two. In the extreme examples, you can either complete your goal with a ton of money or put in a ton of time. In many cases, you don't have unlimited resources to complete your goals, so you have to have a balance of the two. So really, this question goes to the heart of, do you want to spend money to get it done, or do you want to spend the time and do it yourself? For example, do I want to try to move the tiny house myself, or do I want to pay someone to help me do it? I could move the tiny house myself, but it would take me a couple of days to figure out everything that I needed to do, versus just spending the money and having it done in a matter of hours. If you value your time, then you might want to spend a lot of money to outsource certain things and have other people do it for you, because they may be more specialized and they can do it faster and better than you can. Or if it's money that you value, you might want to spend more time researching deals or learning about how you can accomplish the goal yourself by watching YouTube videos, reading books, etc., etc. So where this plays an important role is that when you start to plan, be clear going in whether or not you want to value your time or your money. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to save money and do everything yourself, but halfway through the planning stages, you realize something broke or you need to spend a lot of money trying to fix it, and that you've blown through your budget doing this, or you spent so much time doing it yourself that you didn't complete the goal. Knowing how you will approach the problem in the planning stages will help you guide to completing your goal, and it will help you focus in on whether or not you need to spend more money or more time. So number 4, how reliable are you or others? Even the best plans are crappy ones if you don't end up executing them and completing them. Knowing how reliable you or others can be are key into completing your goals on time. So for example, if you have a goal of wanting to make 100K and you don't like to take risks, meet new people, or do something different, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve that goal. Because at the end of the day, you have to rely on yourself to get you through your plan and ultimately achieve your goal. In this case, knowing that you cannot complete your goal of making 100K per year is a key aspect of figuring out what you need to do to accomplish that goal. So in this particular example, you might need to roll back your end goal and plan for working on different aspects of yourself so that you can get into a position where you can ultimately start the goal of making 100K per year. This is also the case if you need to rely on other people to achieve your goals. Planning in general requires a lot of moving pieces to come together to an end goal. And in a lot of cases, you have to rely on others to help you achieve your goal. We can't all do it ourselves sometimes. So really hone in when you're in the planning stages if the people that you're relying on completing your goals are reliable. In some cases, the solution might be to just have a backup plan or to use other people, or the backup plan might be do it yourself, in which case you need to plan for more time or more money. And then lastly, on the reliability subject, when you're planning to reach an end goal, reassess if that goal is worth completing in the first place. In many cases, a lot of our goals are aspirational. We want it, but we don't want to actually go through the process of accomplishing it. When you start to plan and break down different milestones, you'll quickly realize if that's something you want to do for the long term. If it's something that you really want to accomplish, then during the planning stages, when you're going through step by step, you'll realize that you really want to do this. Otherwise, when you get to some step and you're cringing, then you might want to reassess if the end goal is worth completing in the first place. Planning can help you gauge your own abilities to see something through. And number 5, get feedback. Once you have a plan in place, reach out to other people and ask them if it's a good plan. This is key because we have our own blind spots when we're going through something, and we might not see other alternatives, solutions, or problems that we might encounter. When it comes down to it, asking for help is just a way to figure out if your plan is solid. So hopefully when they're reviewing your plan, they can also suggest backup plans or shore up things that you might be weak in certain areas. So those are my tips and suggestions on how to plan. Planning is putting a structure around accomplishing your end goal. It allows you to create a path from where you are to where you want to go. With a solid plan, it can help you alleviate stress and anxiety if you're planning for a large and complex goal. It allows you to have more understanding and control about what you are doing step by step, and not being overwhelmed by the complex goal you have in front of you. It breaks it down into more manageable chunks for you to accomplish. And once you finish those chunks, you'll gain more confidence in your ability to move forward. So I really hope you enjoyed this video on planning. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but planning can help your life so much by alleviating the stress and anxiety that you might have accomplishing a large, complex goal. I've used it so much in my life that it is a critical skill that I call upon whenever I need to do something big. So thank you for watching. Please leave a comment down below on how planning has helped improve your life. And as always, I'll see you next time.